Hello, I want to show you today how you can draw one portrait in 8 different ways. I want to inspire you with this video so you can try something else for a change while drawing and learn quite a lot from that. I'm gonna start off now with a usual charcoal portrait. Please keep in mind that you read really good charcoal pencil to do a good portrait, because low quality charcoal is often very brittle, and so the strokes become very imprecise, and it's very frustrating to work with low quality charcoal. A charcoal portrait is a very nice thing to do because it always looks very intense, because the charcoal doesn't reflect the light as graphite or usual pencil would do, and rather sucks in the light, and also so it works. It seems very dark and very intense, and spectators are very fascinated usually by a good charcoal portrait. While drawing a charcoal portrait, please keep in mind to work when you're left-handed from left to right, so you don't smudge the picture. That's a very frustrating thing to do, because yes, you can correct mistakes you do with charcoal, but not that much as with pencil or graphite. So just be careful and try to keep your hand off the charcoal, the places you already drew. The best thing about charcoal, in my opinion, is that you can modulate it like clay. You can always add a little bit charcoal dust or take it off again with a kneadable eraser, and you can press it deeper into the paper so it looks darker again. For that I use a tortillon or my chamois leather piece. Without those two tools, my pictures wouldn't look half as realistic. Okay, it's already finished. It took me 1 hour, by the way, to do the head, and 1 hour for the rest. This is the second portrait. I choose watercolor for this, and it's a very interesting technique that is a lot of fun. I always thought I wouldn't be able to do watercolor portraits, because everybody always told me it is so hard to do this, and you can't do anything right when you use watercolor. It will always look very crappy. I found out that this is not true. It is true that it's hard to sketch with watercolor, because it's very hard to control. But if you do a very good sketch with a colored pencil that is water soluble, you have the lines already and do just the shading with the watercolor, and that is much more easy and a lot of fun. And it's quite relaxing to do this technique, because the water flows and the colors merge, and I don't know, it brightens up your spirits. Also, watercolor portraits always look so very lively. They aren't as stiff as, for example, a charcoal portrait or a pencil portrait. They always have a certain mood and always look very interesting. And one of the main advantages about watercolor portraits is that you can always add a certain mood to a face. That means when you want to express that this person is a cheerful one, you just use cheerful colors like or color combinations, much rather, like yellow and orange, so you can show what the character of the person is like. Of course, when you want to draw a very dramatic face, you could use very dark and dramatic combinations like, for example, darkest red and green or something. And that would give you some interesting effects. I strongly advise you to try this out. It's a lot of fun, and really I thought I couldn't do it, but when I tried out I found that it's not that hard and a lot of fun. This is an interesting technique that is very unfamiliar to most. It's called dry brush. You don't work with a pen there or a pencil, you use a brush instead. And what you do is you take black oil, merge it with linseed oil a little bit, and apply the charcoal, the oil to a brush and dry it out by moving it across a spare paper. And so the so-called dry oil can be applied to the paper by rubbing the brush across the paper. And usually dry brush pictures are very intense, and when you have a picture like that in a room, people won't stop looking at it. It attracts the glance like crazy. It's an incredible technique. It takes some time to learn, but it's worth it, and it's very interesting. One of the main advantages of dry brush is that you don't draw proper contours. You don't really draw, you just stroke the brush across the paper and create darker and lighter areas, and you get really nice transitions, and blending is very easy with this. Again, here is good equipment is essentially here. You really need brushes that are stable and won't lose much hair, or else the oil will smear across the paper and smudge it, and it will look ugly. Also, the paper has to be quite thick, so the brush won't hurt it. Here you can see how smooth it looks, especially on the hair. You can get really photorealistic with this technique. It comes from Eastern Europe, by the way, from Russia, for example. This technique is quite familiar. India ink is one of my most favorite techniques right now. because I like the analytic touch it gives a picture. Especially for animal pictures, it's a very nice technique, and it just looks so interesting every time you draw with it. And it's a technique you can just try out because it's so it doesn't cost much. For I think €5 you can get the entire equipment if you want. Of course, India ink can be rubbed off again, so you have to take care to save your image from mistakes. You have to be careful all the time with your hand and not as much the ink. Because of the high contrast in this picture, you can recognize it from quite far away, so that sure is an advantage too. Okay, this took me about 60 minutes, I think, so it's quite a fast technique. Here comes another India ink portrait. This time I chose green ink, just for a change. What I do here is that I don't draw lines, I just make tiny little dots on the paper and create the light and dark areas that way. Which means many little dots on in a dark area and few little dots in a light area. It's an interesting technique because you usually don't work like that, and it's also quite meditative. You forget time and space around you and just do those little dots. It's gets your head clear in some way. This portrait took me 3 hours, I guess, and I didn't notice that at all. I just had some nice music on and forgot everything else around me. It's very interesting to draw this way because usually you use a lot of lines while drawing, for example for things like the contours or lashes, eyelashes or the hair. But when you draw like that with those tiny little dots, you notice that it's also possible to create those structures without using straight lines, just by creating light and dark areas. Therefore you learn a completely new method of shading, and that is quite interesting and absolutely worth trying it out. You can also use a normal fountain pen for that, or even a ballpoint pen, but usually ink works much better. Always make sure when you do this that you take regular breaks. If you aren't as experienced as me, your hand might hurt after like 45 minutes or something, and therefore you should just take a break before, so your hand won't hurt afterwards. Here comes the really hard part of the picture, because the sweater was just black, and it was quite exhausting to draw all those tiny dots. As I already mentioned, this portrait took me 3 hours to finish, and I didn't even draw a background, so it's quite, it eats time up like crazy, but it's also meditative and quite interesting to look at. Okay, here's the third India ink technique. This time a very simple one, a very expressive one, and if you haven't tried this, I think this is my favorite in this tutorial because it's so simple and so expressive. You just draw very simple lines, just the basic lines with the India ink, and after that you switch to watercolor and bring in some shadings, some crazy shadings with combinations of color that aren't as usual. This time I, for example, chose some creepy colors. All in all, without drying, just working this portrait took me just 32 minutes, and I think it looks pretty good for that. This is also a must try out for you. This is a portrait I drew with a ballpoint pen, and I mean everyone has a ballpoint pen at home and can try this out. The interesting thing is that it looks very much like a graphite drawing. You also have to use very fine hatchings and create the shadows that way. And yeah, the point is very fine, so it looks pretty realistic for just a ballpoint pen. And it's something different for a change. This is the last technique I want to show you. This is a very special one. I thought of that when I was looking for something else in my cupboard, and I found those old wax crayons from elementary school, and I just thought of this technique and thought I should show this to you. First of all, I covered the paper with light colors like yellow and orange, and after that I applied a second layer of dark colors like violet and black. And now I start to scratch off the upper layer, and the layer beneath that will shine through, and it looks pretty interesting. But what's very interesting about this technique is that you don't draw as usually the dark parts of a face, like the pupil for example. You draw the light areas, like the white space in the eye. And that way you learn very much about the face. I hope you enjoyed it and will be inspired. Thank you!